I didn't look after my gun properly. I put it on my knees, and somehow I didn't fix it. And the bullet went off. Fortunately, the gun was not facing him, it was facing me. And Museveni fell, no, yenda kunyita. I said, of course, the whole camp was mesmerized. They took me, but of course, eventually they found out that it was a mistake. But somehow, I was about to kill the very able leader of this country by accident. But as I said, God had designed that Museveni lives to lead this country. I met President Museveni in 1965 when I did what was not used at that time, to leave St. Mary's College, Kisubi, where I had completed senior secondary school, and join Ntare School. In fact, my father wondered what I was doing. But I had studied at Kisubi all my life, and I thought I was being short-sighted about Uganda. I decided to look for a school which had similar standards to Kisubi. So I went to Ntare School. And when I arrived at that school, coming from a missionary institution, I was looking for systems. So I looked around and said, where is the headmaster's office? And when I asked, Museveni was around and said, what do you want the headmaster for? I said, I'm a new student, I've just come, and I want to register as a new student. Said, no, this is Ntare School. You go to the notice board, you'll find your name there and it will indicate which house you are supposed to be in. So I went to the notice board, saw my name, and it indicated that to go to Mbaguta House. It so happened that he too also had been fixed in Mbaguta House. So he took me there. And from then onwards, life started with him. We did the same subjects at A level, history, economics, and government, and moved together. There was a habit on Sundays for Ntare School boys to go out for country walks. And we used to go together to Mr. Byanyima's and then come back to do other things. I was a Catholic and he was a Protestant. And so we used to go to different churches on Sunday. And he was saved, Yalimu locally. I think he belonged to the Scripture Union. And was very strict about it. But me, after going out with the walk with him, after we had arrived back, I had the habit of going back to take a little one for me, you know, for the road. And one day he found me, and he was very angry with me. I said, look, I'm Catholic, I drink. If you don't drink, that's your problem. But that's how we started moving together. What I've noted, I think I agree with Mr. Omule, was it Omule, who said Museveni was God sent. He was very religious, very hardworking as a student, and started history and economics, took his studies very, very seriously. But then he took trouble to apply his knowledge toward the situations that were around at that time. That was a time when we've had political parties. We had just got independence in 1962, and things started going wrong. And I think by 1966, the Constitution was abolished, and monarchies were also abolished. I was the only Muganda in Mbaguta House at that time, and I was the only one bothered about abolishing monarchies. He too was sympathetic, and we continued taking interest in politics together. And at one time, there came elections to elect the president of the debating society at Ntare School. And I wanted him to be the president of the history and the debating society, and me the secretary. We attempted doing it, but the elections didn't go our way. Kategaya got elected as the president of the debating society, and some other gentleman from Kabale became a secretary. And well, we lost that one. Then after that, said, but why don't we form our own society? I said, why not? He said, but what is it going to be? He said, History Society. So together we formed the History Society at Ntare School. He became chairman, I became a secretary. And invited other students to join it, and it became a very famous, very, active society. In fact, we wrote a book about King Ntare. I don't know whether that book still is at Ntare School. The history of King Ntare. Because we were in Ntare School, but most people didn't know who Ntare was. We wrote a book about King Ntare. Now, with History Society formed, we started inviting politicians to Ntare School. And that school was a dominant UPC. But, and Obote came and he stayed and so on and so forth. So we also agreed with Mr. Museveni to invite the Democratic Party officials. And that's how Paul Kawanga Semogere and other members of parliament came to address students at Ntare School, which was a novel thing. But that's how then life started. Now, from then onwards, Museveni took leading interest in all political activities. He read a lot of history and associated it with the situations in Uganda at that time. I remember we read about enclosures in British history, I think it was European history, about land. And Museveni, this is it. Because at that time they were trying to establish ranches in Ankole, Okukoma, and he used to tell Okoma. But then he said, I think it may be a good thing, because he was saying him at that time were just grazing, their animals moving all over the place, and so on and so forth. What about, changing situations? But then we went on like that. We finished senior 5, senior 6 at Ntare School, and went to Dar es Salaam together. I think I'm surprised because he qualified to study law, but when we went to university and reached Dar es Salaam, he was not among the law students. He decided to do economics, political science, and I think government, something like that. But then he took on a new brand of politics. He read all the socialist literature that was there to be read. And I think after about 3-4 months, the Museveni I knew, who used to say that power comes from God, according to them, started also saying that power is that which comes out of the barrel of a gun. Chairman Mao tells us. And he took that matter seriously. I don't know how he started getting training in these gun things. And then he formed an association, USAF, University Students of Uganda, something like that, I don't know, which brought together students from East Africa, and we used to study about Africa matters and things like that, and go out all over, do things. And in the process of doing that, he was very close to TANU Youth League leaders, and to Ben Mkapa, at that time was just a publicity secretary of the TANU at that time. And he used to take us out to all these discussions, and then he got into contact with the freedom fighters, the Mondlanes, the whatnot, and so on and so forth. So we used to meet these people. And then he was also talking about training and that kind of military things. It is in that process that one day the students at the university decided to organize what is called a Raga Day. I'd never seen it, but it is something where students would dress in rags and go begging in town to raise money for poor people. When Museveni heard of that, he said, "This is abusing poor people and Africans." He said, "We shall have to put a stop to it." Now, virtually the whole university had organized tractors, lorries, and whatnot, things which would be used to cut out that rugged day in town. So in the evening when they went to sleep, we went to the trucks and started deflating all the tires. Tractors, have you ever deflated a tire? And then in the evening we started moving. No rugged day. No rugged day. We moved around. So these people, the other students came around to see what had happened. And lo and behold, they came to what the trucks which were going to be used, they were all deflated. And we told them, you cannot do a thing like that. In fact, the dean of students came and asked, why are you doing this? Said, this is an abuse and whatnot. Of course, there was no rugged day, but the authorities were not very pleased with us. As if that was not enough, Museveni then organized for us to go to the liberated areas of Mozambique. Mondlane used to come tell us that there are some areas which are liberated and they are free. And then one day said, you can, I think he organized it, and I think 10 students agreed to travel to Mozambique quietly and see the liberated areas without the knowledge of the university authorities. We went. I think eventually it was only 7 of us who went. From Uganda it was him and myself, and then 2 Zambians, and 7. And we crossed into Mozambique, and we joined the freedom fighters. It is there that then they started training us in shooting and whatnot, and we moved around. And it is in the course of those days when we were being trained, where we were sitting somewhere at a table. I didn't look after my gun properly. I put it on my knees, and somehow I didn't fix it. And the bullet went off. Fortunately, the gun was not facing him, it was facing and Museveni no, yenda kunyita. I said, of course, the whole camp was mesmerized. They took me, but of course, eventually they found out that it was a mistake. But somehow, I was about to kill the very able leader of this country by accident. But as I said, God had designed that Museveni lives to lead this country. He has done it very well. For those of you, for us, we were born during colonial times. We saw independence coming. Our African leaders came, mismanaged the country. The constitution was abolished. People were detained without trial, and so on. And we went through that system. And he made up his mind that this situation has to be corrected. And so he started reading this movement, training. I don't know where he trained in all these things, and I now see how many other people got trained in the process. And but he used to contact me for all sorts of things. Now, when Idi Amin overthrew the government, he left the country. I remained around, and one day I was in my office in Masaka, and then somebody tells me, Museveni wants to see you. I said, Museveni left the country. Who does he want to see me for? I arranged to go and meet him. But before I arrived where he was supposed to go, when I was open to see clients, he was sitting among my clients and told me he was, the program he had about training people and doing liberation things. And looking back and seeing what he has been able to do, to go train people, raise organizations, lead government, be a Pan-Africanist, I cannot say anything except that it's God who decided that Museveni should live and be a leader for this country. So, Your Excellency, happy birthday, and please continue to do what you have done so well for this country. And I think all of us, especially the young people, should walk in his footsteps, to try to continue the liberation and development of this country. Thank you very much.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you very much. Webale nnyo akaboozaako.